Welcome into a glitch in the matrix. I'm your host, Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress, and I am so glad you guys are here today. Man, thank you so much to all my moderators for being here. I see y'all in that chat already going, and yeah, I have such a great show for us today. Wow, you guys are going to be blown away by my guest today. I have my friends, Jimmy Paine and James Rink here, and we're going to be talking about real vampires. And my goodness, I have goosebumps all over my body right now. They're both in the studio backstage, and I'm going to introduce them in just a minute. Okay, so if you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows, you are welcome to go check out my website. That's the cryptidhuntress.com. That's on the ticker down there, rolling through. You can find all my shows there, from the shows here on the Cryptid Huntress on YouTube, all the way to Spaced Out Radio every weekend, Saturday and Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so y'all come see me there. I always have good shows over there. And I have great shows over here too. So yeah, so do that. Also, if you'd like to support some of my work that I'm doing here, I have a Patreon. That's the Cryptid Huntress over on Patreon. And also my shop is War Woman Goods. And shout out to everybody who's been supporting me through those two outlets. It really does make me feel warm and fuzzy inside, man. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Well, let's do not waste any bit of time today. I want to go ahead and introduce James and Jimmy. And you will probably know James Rink from Super Soldier Talk on YouTube and all over social media. And Jimmy Paine as well from over there, because he's a guest on James's shows. And we're both part of the Super Soldier projects. All right. So let me introduce them formally. James Rink is a Super Soldier hold on, excuse me. Sorry, I forgot to turn my ringer off on my phone. James Rink is a Super Soldier meditation practitioner, researcher, author, and video producer. Through his Super Soldier Talk YouTube series, he has helped awaken humanity to the secret activities of the covert government, uncovering topics such as brainwashing, trauma, milabs, which stands for military abductions, and covert harassment, all of which he has had to endure his entire life as a project of Project Surrogate, and MK Ultra Milab Super Soldier Experimentation. His book, Lone Wolf, chronicles these projects. Super Soldier Agent Jimmy Paine, aka Dallas, was in the secret space program from 1959 to 1996. During this time, he was a shuttlecraft pilot for the Tall White Warriors of Area 51 and participated in time travel missions with the Montauk Boys at Camp Hero. He also recalls working for the Wayland Corporation, where he encountered a xenomorph at LV-426, which the movie Aliens was based off of. He was stationed on Mars, Titan, and the Moon. And let me introduce to the show today to talk about vampires. I have my friend James Rink and my other friend Jimmy Paine here today. Hey, James.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me on here, Jessica. So today, everybody get your Bloody Marys ready, and we're going to have an amazing show in this spooktacular event. We're going to find out the reason why everyone hates vampires. And what do you think? What do you think the reason why they hate vampires?
Well, I don't know. Is this one of your jokes? Because you got some good vampire jokes, James. And you also
It's because
today, right?
It's because they suck. Yeah, vampires suck.
But they totally suck. You know who doesn't suck is Jimmy Paine. Welcome to the show, Jimmy. I see you got your microphone muted, so I just want to welcome you today too. We have so much to talk about this afternoon. James, I told you before we went live, I look like I got the life sucked out of me. Like I look really pale today, and then I noticed you look like a vampire yourself today. So we're kind of playing the roles.
Certainly, I'm getting ready to go into a high stakes game here as we learn more about vampires and where they live. It's a very, according to Jimmy, it's a very dangerous situation. Yeah. So, and Jimmy, I think you might even want to do 2-part series about this event.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to discuss.
Is Jimmy here?
Yes.
He made. Oh, there he is. There's Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. Welcome to the show.
Welcome you.
Thank you. I heard you might have some information on vampires that you could tell us today.
Yes, I'm very acquainted with them. This is part of a 2-part story. We're not going to be able to cover it all today. but we're going to lay the groundwork for it. Um, so let me first start off about my background. Um, when I was young, I was taken to Frenchman Flats, New Mexico, at Area 51, and I was studying the alien craft and the aliens themselves, or trying to understand them. And but what happened? We had some grisly murders started up in Las Vegas, and uh, these murders occurred in the early 70s, where they were finding. First, they started finding animals drained of their blood, cats, dogs, and it was very disturbing. And then we started, well, I'll say the Las Vegas Police Department started to find the tourists being killed and attacked, and their blood was drained. So the Las Vegas Police Department, they know us. We have men from Area 51 that cycle in and out, and some of them do get jobs on the Las Vegas department. So what happened was, you don't, before you become one of the MIBs, Men in Black, you go through a lengthy training process. Now, for those that don't know this, the Men in Black was created by President Roosevelt in 1947. After the war, the Army Air Corps, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard all had their intelligence officers, and the war was over, so they had to adapt to a more smaller agency. So President Roosevelt walked into the Navy Admiral's office, and he had a long black coat, some sunglasses, and a dagger. And he handed it to him and says, "We're going civilian now, and everything's got to go undercover." So that's when the Men in Black was first created. Now, when that happened, they also created the National, uh, uh, well, they created the CIA and an NSA as well. And but the Men in Black was left inside the industrial park. And what we did was basically back engineer alien craft, and study the extraterrestrials. That's where I came in at. Now, I I've been at Area 51 since right at about 1959 is when I first showed up as a child. And so I grew up around the MIBs. So one day, when I was about 14 years old, as I said, this was going on about the bodies being found in Las Vegas, being drained of blood. So I was brought to the Frenchman Flats medical facility, research facility, and I went into a room, and we had a technician there, and they had an operation the night before. And so when I went into the room, there was a group of maybe a dozen to 15 individuals. They were very strange looking. They were very pale. They did not make one sound. You could not even hear them as they stood there. They're extremely quiet. Their skin was very pale, very chalky, and one of the males in the group stared, and I have been, like I said, I've been all over the world, been in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. I know what it's like to go into the killing fields. And what I saw there was a human, or what appeared to be a human, that could just look straight through you, and he looked at you as if he was a predator. And he never blinked. He just very silently looked. And so I immediately knew something wasn't right. And the women that were with him was equally quiet. I'd never seen that many people that quiet before in the room. So when I walked into the room, there was a line in the middle of the room, and they was ordered to stay on the other side of the line next to the wall. Now, I'm going to explain this wall to you because this wall is important. All right, the wall had different types of wallpaper on it. Some of the wallpaper would be like a zebra, black and white stripes. You had some wallpaper that had X's and squares and circles. You had other wallpaper that was red or blue or yellow, but it was made where if you stood in front of this wall, you would stick out. You couldn't hide. Okay, you just would not blend into anything. It's purposely made that way. So I went around to the to the to the counter where they had this a metal they had a metal tray with a lid on it, surgical tray. And like when you remove organs or whatever, you put them in a stainless steel pan with a lid on it. And the technician he said, "Look, Jim, I need to show you something." Now, I had noticed when I walked in that one of the males in the room, his hand had been bandaged up. So this was an operation that was carried out on him the night before. So when I sat down to examine what was in the stainless steel tray, I lifted the lid up, and when I looked into the tray, there was a finger, one finger over from his thumb. Now, what I saw is I know it's hard to believe this, but what I saw was a finger that had been removed 5 hours earlier that was still moving.
Ooh.
This finger was still moving it had been surgically removed from the entity, and it was still moving. And I could tell by looking at it that the hand was webbed. It had webs between the fingers in other words, this came off of a human hand that had webbed fingers. So next to the tray was a microscope, and we had samples of the blood. And I took the slides that the blood was on, and I put it up under the microscope, and I looked at it, and it was not human blood. What the blood was similar to, I said similar. It was similar to the blood of an octopus. It wasn't human blood. It was a marine type, reptilian type blood. Okay, it wasn't any of the blood groups that we know. All right, so at this point, the technician said, "Look, we have to do a test here." So he told it to me very quietly, low tone. So he says, I want you to get up and go to the end of the room. There's a door frame, like you go into another room. He says, I want you to stand in the middle of the door frame. So I walked over to the end of the room and I stood right in the frame of the door. And then he walked up with his back towards the people that were next to the wall. And they couldn't see over him. They couldn't see what he had. But in his pocket, he had a service whistle similar to what a policeman would have. Okay, it was a service whistle. And he told me, he said, look, he's put the whistle in my hand, and he also had a mirror. I took a mirror, put it in one hand, and took the service whistle and had it in my other hand. And he says, I want you to turn around. I want you to blow as loud as you can into the whistle. And then I want you, after you through blowing, I want you to put the whistle up, put it up to your face, and look behind you and look at the people standing next to the wall. All right. So I turned and he walked back across the room, and so at that point I blew as loud as I could into the whistle. And it's kind of make a startling. If you didn't know I was going to blow, it would startle you, And I took the mirror and I put it up to where I could see into it. I angled it back towards the wall. And I could not see these dozen people.
Wow.
I could see the wall, but I could not see the people. And I had it in my hand for about 3 or 4 minutes looking. I could not see them. So I turned around and they were there. Now, what had happened, some lizards can change colors. All right. Some lizards can shipshape. They can change their colors to match flowers. But what was unusual about this, even though the wall had different color stripes and stars and X's and round circles, their skin blended in with the wallpaper. Now their clothes was white. That also changed. That part, I know on a medical end, I can look at their skin changing. How they did the clothes is still uncertain to me, unless it's the power of suggestion. The power of suggestion. Never look a vampire head on in face wise. Never do that. All right, so I'm looking at an oddity I've never seen before. And so the technician then went over and he had a flashlight in his hand. He handed me a flashlight and he quietly again, he said, I'm going to walk over to the room here by the light switch. I'm going to cut the light switch off. And then I want you cut your flashlight on and shine it onto these entities here. So he walked across the room. They couldn't hear us because we was whispering. The light cut off. I cut on my service flashlight. And what I saw was their eyes all lit up like a dog or a cat. If you ever had in your vehicle and there was a dog or a cat and their eyes lit up, this is what I was looking at. All right, so I'm already looking at an extraterrestrial that has inbred or that has manipulated the human DNA, and it has adapted to our environment. All right. So anyway, you know, we were able to go out. I was still in training at that time. We were able to go into Las Vegas and remove the entity and, stop the killings. Now, this was like when I was about 14, 15 years old. So some years will pass, and then I'm going to now move into the history of vampires before we go into our next case, our next X-File case. All right. History tells us that before there was a United States or in Canada, there was just this vast wilderness area of America. Now, back in 1663, there was the French King Louis XIV. They sent colonists over to New France. Now, New France was in what we would now consider Quebec, Canada, and it was only a colony there of former veterans that had come to the New France to build a new country. And so they were running after these men was running after Indian squaws, female Indians, and they needed wives. So King Louis XIV, he had a bishop, a Catholic bishop in Quebec, and this Catholic bishop had 3 missionary priests under him, and they wanted to bring the word of God, the ministry of God, to these men, and they didn't want them, marrying the Indian women. They wanted to claim New France. So they write the bishop of that time was writing back and forth to the king, and the king said, "Well, look, you have orphanages, right?" And Catholic Church did, and so what they did, they were going to clean out the orphanages and send these young females from age 12 years old up to 25. They're going to move them out of these orphanages, and they're going to bring them to the New World, New France, and they're going to basically mail order brides. They're going to fix them up with the French men and get them married off, get some babies going. So they sent over 800 that we know of. All right, that went off pretty good, 800 new brides up in Quebec. And that happened between 1663 and 1673 during a 10-year period. Well, the story doesn't end there. New France also had colonies south of Quebec in the outpost called New Orleans. And New Orleans also had 2 other outposts to the east of it. You have the Biloxi outpost, and you also had the Mobile outpost. We would know them today, those 3 areas, as the state of Louisiana, the state of Mississippi, and the state of Mobile, Alabama. All right. So the second batch gets sent in. They sent them in to, they sent them into Biloxi. The Biloxi men got, I want to say here, give me a moment, let me look at my note. They got in they got it in 1704. They sent them on a ship called the Pelican, and they arrived in 1704. And then a few years later, they sent 20 girls to Mobile, Alabama. You know, you had the outpost in Mobile, Alabama. Now, so everything's going pretty good. You know, we got the French men married off in Quebec. We got the brides for the Biloxi outpost, and we got brides for the Mobile outpost. Now, we're running up on the year 1721, and we need to get some brides for the New Orleans bunch of traders, fur traders. So they get 88 women on January the 8th, 1721. 88 women landed in Mobile, Alabama. Now, what was different was, you know, word had gotten around by this time that, hey, this ain't a good place. It's hot. There's mosquitoes. There's snakes. There's yellow fever, and so forth. And so they're running out of these good young virgins. So they had turned, they were trying to find women for the New Orleans bunch. But what had happened was, not only were the men in New Orleans going after the Indians in the area, they were also going after the enslaved black women, Creoles. And that they kind of had a downward opinion about the men out of New Orleans. So they said, we ain't gonna send them our best. We're going to go to the prisons, and we're going to pull out the women from the prisons. We're going to empty our prisons. So the 88 women were for institutional facilities. They were prostitutes. They were just the scum of the earth. Now, what was different about the 1721 group was they looked very, they didn't have no color to their skin. They looked rather pale, like they had a disease. Now, in the old world, there was a disease called consumption, and it was considered a wasting disease, and you just looked very awful, you know, and it killed many people. We now know that disease, consumption, as TB, tuberculosis. So everyone's thinking these women have got tuberculosis, you know, they don't look right. There's something different about them. So they take them and they bring them to New Orleans, and some were beaten. You know, they were running around having affairs. They were prostitutes. They were just ill-gotten females. And, but what happened, strange things started occurring. And so that is when we have the nuns that were in New Orleans got together. They were so they gathered these women up. They brought them to where the church was at to house them. And these women were carrying these trunks with them. And the trunks look very similar to what we nowadays have known as caskets. There were long trunks. They couldn't figure out why do these females travel with these trunks? You know, they thought they might have had their stuff in it, but they didn't. They were called casket girls. That was a term that the name was used. These were casket girls. So they brought them to the Covenant, and they put them up on the 3rd floor. The nuns stayed on the 2nd floor. And no, it was much more cruder than that. Just a wood box, very crude.
Okay.
Just made out of wood. James, I think I sent you a picture of it in your email. That's not a representation of it. It's not a representation.
Okay. Jimmy, I was just putting that up there because I heard that vampires actually use a coffin like that because it's in a trapezoid shape. And so it traps demons is what they say. So,
well,
trying to get this off the screen. Yeah. There we go.
But getting back to the story. So they put them up in the dormitory. And the next morning they went up there and they couldn't find them. And they searched and they searched. And they had just disappeared. So, there's starting to be grisly murders all over the New Orleans. So what happened was the bishop informed the Catholic Church in Rome, and the priest from Rome came in. They took silver nails and they nailed the windows shut. They nailed the windows shut on the 3rd floor. And of course, the nails were blessed. And so that is this is how they first got in to what we now know as the United States.
Wow.
All right, so you have to know what cities they're in before you can start tracking them. Now, Las Vegas didn't spring up till the 40s or early 50s, but vampires, they're kind of like albinos in a way. If they get too much sunlight, they blister. They need the dark. Now, let's talk about adrenochrome for a moment here. We've all heard about adrenochrome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, these vampires, they'll bite you on the neck where your jugular vein is at, and they have to have the blood. It's like milk to them. All right. Now, people used to take garlic, and they would eat garlic. Now, that garlic would get into your bloodstream. It'd get into your organs. How would you like it if I took powdered garlic, Jessica,
Yes.
and I poured it on your cereal, and I put it on your eggs, and I put it on your ice cream? It kind of turn you off. You know what I mean? You just wouldn't. It'll kill your taste.
I like garlic, but okay, yeah, you're right. Cereal would be gross for sure. I'd be mad.
And you gave it to your baby. I mean,
No.
you have a crying baby on your hand.
That's right.
All right. So back then, people didn't know what, they only knew that, you eat the garlic, that it would, kill the taste for these creatures. So there's a little truth to the garlic now. And there's a little truth to the mirror. There's no truth to the silver killing it. Silver's just, a metal that they used because they had silver in the church, made their items out of silver. All right, but getting back to these vampires, we've got a problem here in the United States. And see, New Orleans is the only place that I know of that has blood banks. Anybody can go up and say, can I have blood for my ritualistic ceremony? New Orleans, you can do that. Why?
What?
Why is New?
Really?
Yes. Why is New Orleans where you can go in and buy blood off the street without a doctor's, prescription? Take it home with you. All right. So you don't know if that blood is from a newborn baby or what. All right. So New Orleans is dark at night. People wear masks on the streets, particularly Mardi Gras. They drink a lot, and they pass out. And you have people from all over the world, and you can't keep up with them. Just look at all the immigrants right now. You don't know who's in New Orleans. Who you wouldn't know if they're missing or not. But anyhow, I'm going to get back now to a case that I had to come up in New Orleans. Well, my folks are from that part of the country, where all these little cities that we just talked about, or my folks all live in those cities down there, my relatives. And I would go down in the summer, and because I know my way around. And so I always wear my uniform, which was a dark suit, just like you see Men in Black do. But the only time I ever put a religious garment on is when I did put a priest uniform on. Now, I have a dual religion. It's Roman Catholic and Native American Paiute. When you're exposed to extraterrestrials, most of us have dual religions. We can't explain these things. So we have to accept what we believe in. But I found that people would talk to a priest faster than some stranger off the street or a government official. So I would put on my priest collar and go on down into the New Orleans district. At the time, I knew a woman, she voodoo priestess down there, and it's a speakeasy town. Tell me what's going on, and where are these vampires, where they hang out at, and word gets on the street. You're looking for street people, and sure enough, I get a hit. So I go out one night, and I'm seeing activity, and I've got my long priest coat on. I've got my handcuffs in there and my zip ties. I got my wooden stakes and my hammer, and I'm going to either bring them back to Area 51, or I'm going to give him peace. The good Lord has sent me to give them peace if they do not return. I rather them return where we can, study them. If not, I will do what's necessary to stop it, because it will attack your child and drain the blood out. So one night it was just after dusk, I went to the certain area of the city, and sure enough, he came out of the attic window. He was walking on a building, and I watched him for a while, and he spotted me, and then he went back in. And a few minutes later, the female came out, and she's dressed as if she had been in a coffin. See, when they sleep, they look like somebody that's had consumption, that's just died. Okay. And so they like to sleep in burial clothes. And she came out, and she was there, on the roof. Now, this is the most dangerous part, because you can't get fixated looking at one. You need to start looking around. And sure enough, there was two more that had come up that was circling around me. They hunt in packs. They do hunt in packs. And of course, I had to do what was the proper thing. He saw me and I saw it. both of them. And so they could attack me that night. And of course, sunrise, I went in there, I had my stake, and I did what was necessary to take down the alpha leader. I took him out. And the other ones, I nailed up the coffins, and we got a panel truck, loaded it up, get those back to Area 51 for study. But society creates a priest, and I do not wish for Father Paine to ever have to do that. But men are trained at Area 51 to do these things. And everything that you've seen in the movies can compare to nothing like that. Now, there is a little truth to Interview with a Vampire. Most of us hype, but how long they live is questionable. But vampires are very real. They're a product of genetic engineering. We are in occupation. Okay, so when you look at things such as the Queen of England and her son Charles, which is King Charles, excuse me. You know, they travel with blood everywhere they go, and I know the Queen lady, the Queen, she had to have blood. And so I'm aware of these problems, and there's been other times I've done stuff. I'm not going to get into it on this program, but I've done a time jump in which I've gone back in time and caught these creatures. And when you see somebody on the internet and they're advertising themselves as a vampire hunter, just dismiss it. There's too many people wanting notoriety. I've never written a book about it. I don't go and do public lectures on it. These people are just there for a little notoriety, and they pick up stuff like in this room here and they echo it, and they try to elevate themselves. It's usually a cult member trying to do these things, and or it could be somebody owns a business that wants a little little advertisement. You got a lot of teenagers and the gothic stuff, and you also have a lot of people who are sick, mentally sick, that wants to adapt that lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's more common than we understand. It's just regular old humans, after the research that I've done on vampires, Jimmy, I can't believe the number of people who consider themselves vampires and how many, like, I guess they kind of coincide with the goth community, from what I understand, and the Church of Satan as well. So it's not uncommon. And of course, we have a lot of blood drinkers and blood suckers as far as cryptids go. And I guess you could consider a vampire a cryptid.
Well, they're definitely engineered. I mean, something has taken hold of the human DNA and injected itself. And it's like I said, they go unchecked now. There's a lot going on at Area 51. I haven't been down there in years, but when politicians get involved, it's really a bad thing. And even the Catholic Church, which has a long history of documenting these things, they don't really have. When you get into religion, you get into a real slippery slope. So I understand it, but I'm one step back on the side of Area 51. And when you go through and you watch these autopsies and you look at you cut these creatures open, uh, you start looking at it that it doesn't have a soul. And when you have a soul, uh, you have compassion. And these creatures lack compassion. They're very cold. Um, and it's very hard to explain it. It's the closest thing to evil that I think that you can get. It's the closest thing to evil. I was telling James earlier today, me and him talked just briefly. Um, at Camp Hero, not far from Camp Hero, you come to a little town called Westport, Massachusetts. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Collins family, if you ever watched the movie Dark Shadows, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think they did a remake of it not long ago about a vampire. There's truth to all that as well, where people were opening graves up and driving stakes through it. These are mostly amateur people, but the purpose of driving the stake through the heart is that it would appear to be dead when it lays in the coffin, but the safest way to do it is to run a stake through his heart because it'll suck you dry. It uses your heart. When it attacks you and bites your neck, you go into shock and your heart starts pumping and it's just sucking all the blood out of you. Your heart is pumping the blood out. So to put terror in these creatures' souls, we use stakes to jam through his heart. See, terror meets terror. That's
So,
force.
so Jimmy, when you killed the vampire, did it scream, or did you just expose it to sunlight and it melted in front of you?
Well, first of all, we don't use the word kill. We use the word plausible deniability. I'll let your imagination fill in. Now, as far as exposure to light and they burn up, no, that doesn't happen. They'll sunburn very easily like an albino person will. They sunburn very easily. Their skin is very fair, very chalky. Uh, they don't have any tint to their skin. Their blood is more like that of an octopus. It's not the blood of a human. It appears to be human, but a full-blooded vampire is going to have webbed feet and webbed hands. He would appear to look human. And if you stand in front of it, his, and I'm not sure how it happens, but his brain sends out electrical signals. Now, we know that sharks navigate by electrical signals. We also know bats send out radar and they navigate by clicks. Well, we have something in between that here. They also are telepathic. Vampires are telepathic. So that's how they communicate between one another. So you have to be aware of that. They won't make noise, but one could get sitting another one in a different room what to do. See, you have to be careful of it. Now, back in 1978, two inexperienced paranormal researchers decided they were going to go down to New Orleans to this covert where the nurses live down there. Well, not nurses, but nuns, correction, lived at. And they were hanging around the museum asking questions, and they were run off, loitering. They were disturbing just too many of the people coming in. Hey, do you know what's going on? And blah blah blah. And so they got kicked out of the museum. Well, that night they went back and set up cameras to record anything coming in and out of the attic of the third floor.
Wow.
Well, during the night, the cameras started rolling and they were attacked. And the next morning, they found 2 bodies. Their bodies were torn to pieces. All their blood was drained. Now,
Whoa.
what happened here is that you had 2 paranormal researchers that was going to go vampire hunting, and they became victims themselves. So that's why I tell, I'm saying to you today, don't do that. Don't go down there and run cameras at night. Chances are, you're going to be attacked and mugged anyway. But these creatures do exist, and they feed off of your human soul, your life essence. Okay, so that's a warning to any paranormal researcher. Don't become a victim of your own bizarre beliefs in trying to get to the bottom of it. The man at Area 51 knows what's going on, and they're not here to write a book. You may want to write a book or make a movie, but it's not worth it if you bring your camera down there and get torn to shreds. The police.
Yeah. Hey,
He or she was mugged and killed and what have you.
yeah, Jimmy. So I have a good friend of mine, Matthew Delph. He does Bigfoot research with me, but he has spent a lot of time in New Orleans recently studying vampires and going to. There's like a convent. I guess that's what the one you were talking about,
Yes.
where they had all the caskets there. He's been there, and there's a dungeon that he loves to go to. I know he's been there at least once, where they don't allow you to take pictures there because they say that an old vampire actually lives there to this day. And it's very dangerous. I always warn him not to do that because I'm scared for him. But it's a real thing for sure.
Well, I don't know about his experience. You have to be able to pull from knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, Area 51 was only created in 1947. So most of my research has been with the Catholic Church, the history. They have more or less documented it. And you have to remember there's people that ride around New Orleans that runs a vampire clubs and all this. Is basically just cult people.
Okay.
You see, they're cult people, but you better bet there are vampires that walk around there at night. And now that we have computers and TVs and radios, they're more educated. I honestly, I would not put it past them to have a Facebook account.
Probably not.
And luring people to certain spots and attacking them.
Jimmy, we
So-
have a couple of questions. Can I ask you some questions quickly? Okay, so does the Vatican have hidden artifacts and information around vampires?
Yes, I have been in the libraries, the secret libraries. In fact, I was doing research on some of the Tesla inventions. Tesla has quite a few patents in there that's being hid. And he also has the history of vampires and werewolves and, Satanism. I've dealt with demonology, such if you watch the movie The Exorcist, that was one of my first exorcists that I was at. And every now and then they'll look up and push one of us down, push us out of one and down a flight of stairs and kill one of us. So,
Yeah. So you got to be careful what you say, for sure. I have another question. Can vampires, let's see, do they hunt you in your house? Like, can they come in your house? Because I've heard you have to invite them in.
To me, that never happened. I wouldn't let anybody in my house, vampire or straight.
Right.
A lot of that's just urban legend. Um, just like the sunlight and the garlic and everything. A lot of it's embedded with our culture.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I have a cousin who starred in a movie, and it was called Let Me In, and it was actually really good. This is my cousin Chloe Grace Moretz, and that was an interesting movie about a kid, basically. Well, a lot of these vampires may not be kids; they may be super old, but they just, to us in our years, in our terms, we think that they're kids.
Well,
They're actually ageless, I assume.
they may age a little slower. Um, I don't really know the lifespan of them. I've only been around so many years myself. You have to still look at Area 51 as being the new kid on the block. Okay. Um, I'm going to get in very deeply into where they come from in Transylvania on our next show. I'm going to be really revealing some startling facts concerning World War II that's still going on to this day. And I honestly think that you'll view things differently. Um, in your type of work, Jessica, you have to keep an open mind. Um, and you have people also that are hoaxsters. They'll tell you a lie. They just want to get on your show. They either want a camera or they want a book made about them or a movie. Um, and it's just a long process how you have to weed these people out. Um, but it's a learning curve to all this. Takes years to learn it.
It
I
is.
have, I have some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do vampires age?
James, I believe they probably age slower. As I said, Area 51 was not, the Men in Black were not created in 1947. Okay. And I was, I'm the youngest MIB in the history. They're very strict. They want you to be 18 years old. I made it 17 because the man that I replaced had a heart attack and a stroke. And as I said earlier, we have to rely off the Catholic Church because they document everything back for 2,000 years. So we just have to take what we can find. You have to remember, New Orleans has been floods, there have been plagues, there's been fires, hurricanes throughout history. The French army themselves has been involved in over 100 battles, 59 wars they won, 26 wars they lost, 15 wars were basically peace treaties made. So you have the French army running all over Europe uh, into 100 wars. I mean, it dislodged a lot of people. These wars do. You had the plagues over in Europe in the Middle Ages, and documents were lost. Documents, uh, were damaged through time.
So Jimmy, I got more questions. So for sake of time, let's try to go real quickly. Do you think these vampires are dead? Do they still have a soul, or are they in another dimension?
They're here now. They're not in another dimension. They're in our dimension. You can feel them. You can touch them. As far as a soul, they do not have a soul. What It's hard to explain it unless you've been in the killing fields of Cambodia or Laos or Vietnam. I've seen men turn into animals to survive. But what I looked at in that room at Frenchman Flats was it had no feelings. It just looked straight through you. It saw you as prey, and it is a predator. And
Can
go
Yeah,
ahead.
can you describe what makes them look so ugly?
James, they look just like you look, but with all your blood drained out. Uh, as I said, they look like someone has TB, or as we in the Middle Ages they call consumption. They're very pale. Um, they're they're very you would. It's the way they act. You have to be around one. It's hard to describe it till you get around one of them. Um, the TV and all the movies, all the books that's been wrote does not give them the true credit. Nothing can compare close to anything you've seen on TV, everything that you've read, everything you've been told is not correct. I'm talking about something that is evil, that is not
Okay.
very human.
Yeah. Thank you. Two quick questions. How many vampires do you think exist in the modern era, and do they go mad if they see blood?
Good questions.
Well, they get into a fit like it's kind of like a shark. Once sharks start feeding on something, they go into a frenzy. Um, Now, what was the other part of your question?
How many vampires exist in the modern era?
James, it's very hard to answer that. Uh, we don't know. The best way is to follow the trail of dead bodies.
Oh,
If you if you drink their blood, would you convert into a vampire?
On our second show, I'm going to release some information about that. Uh, you're going to be very surprised what type of research we were involved in at Frenchman Flats. Um, I think it's going to get a lot of people shook up and talking. Uh, you know, this area needs new information in it, and there hadn't been no new information that's come out in a very long time. I'd rather save that for our next show and go into detail.
okay. Jimmy, how can people protect ourselves against vampires? Is there anything we can do to keep them away other than garlic?
Well, don't walk the streets of New Orleans at 2 o'clock in the morning. You
Ah,
know, don't
common sense.
common sense, and stay out of cults. These cults are kind of like a Church of Satan type, and you have um, you have people down in New York. See, you have to remember, France, when they cleaned out their prisons, sent all their undesirables to New Orleans, and their descendants are just like their ancestors. You know, they come from their scum of the earth. Um, it's bred into them. I'm not saying all people in New Orleans are like that, but I'm saying that vampires congregate in certain areas. They congregate in groups for security reasons. They all know they're different, and you have to know where they're at. We have vampires in New Orleans. Probably a few still left in Mobile and Biloxi, Mississippi. They travel up and down the road there, and you have all these people going in to New Orleans that are undocumented. So it's a feeding ground for them. And now, since Las Vegas is here, Las Vegas is a 24/7 city, and so there's some in Las Vegas. But we take them to Area 51. We study them. and they're isolated. And but if they step out of line, we go get them. We bring them back.
Wow. Okay, I got to make an announcement. I do have someone picking up my son today, so we can go a little bit longer if you guys want to, than I was expecting today. So I have a question, Jimmy. Since the vampires have a octopus-like blood, some people say the octopi are not from this planet. Do you think that the vampires are potentially an extraterrestrial of some sort mixed with human DNA?
Yes, I know they are.
Okay.
They're genetically modified humans. We're being colonized. We're being occupied. Okay. That's why you keep hearing reports of vampires and werewolves and all this strange stuff. Bigfoot. These are genetic experiments that some of them I have been privileged to witness firsthand.
Wow. That's interesting. I know that our government studies demonology, and they have they study some of these fringe things, and they're very much a part of all of it. And so that would explain, I guess, some of this. Not to say that vampires are demons. Do you consider vampires demons, Jimmy?
Yes.
Okay.
They're a step beyond Satanist. They're a step. Well, they're more than a step beyond Satanist. They're evil. It's not human what you're looking at. It may appear to be human. It is not human.
Wow.
What
Okay.
if a human was to mate with one of them? Would the child would convert into a chimera? Something
Like a hybrid?
Yeah.
Hybrid. Like on Underworld or whatever those movies are.
James, it's possible with the sperm, but it would still have characteristics of a human mixed with it. I believe that's how they're shielded. You have an inner layer and outer layer of them, which is the inner layer is totally a vampire, and the outer layer may share traits of it. It may drink blood and also drink a little milk, but that's where you get into the Satanists and everything.
Well, I've been seeing this one video that's been going around of a guy who claims to have video, and I've seen the video. It looks like Nosferatu, basically, walking through his home, and he says that this is a vampire that has followed his family around for centuries. And I guess he comes from a long line of, I don't know if they're vampires or vampire hunters. I haven't done my research on it, but I'm sure people in the chat are familiar with it too. But this is modern day. And he's terrified because this vampire has been underneath his house. It's in his house. He has a video of it walking through his living room. Now, are these connected generationally, Jimmy? Like, if your family was haunted by vampires, can we expect to be haunted by vampires as well, or hunted by vampires?
I don't think so. What I believe is that when you see one, there's more around you. He's just in the general area. They are a very close-knit group, okay?
Okay.
And safety is in numbers. And you get an outsider, they'll kill it or use it for sacramental purposes. That's why I say you have to be careful of cults. New Orleans has more than their share of cults. You may go down there and be doing a paranormal investigation and wound up like the other two that were murdered. Okay. You have to know your way around New Orleans. And unless you've lived in that area or have relatives in the area, I wouldn't go walking around at night. I mean, personally, I wouldn't. fine during the day, but not at night.
Hmm. Okay, Jimmy. James, a guy named James Rink has a question in the chat.
Oh, that's my account.
I know. I was kidding. I know that's you. Uh, so, how could one theoretically go about killing one if necessary, Jimmy?
Well, you want to stop his heart. All right. Um, you take you take a wood stick and a hammer, and you put it through his chest. If it's dead, you didn't kill anything. It was already dead. It can look like a deceased person. You can't go to jail if you run a stake through a dead person's chest. But if you hammer in that chest and he or she is trying to wake up, you got a vampire. Okay? It'll look like someone that has died from TB. They can imitate a deceased person, and they sleep during the day because if they get out in the sun, it's going to burn their skin. They'll get sunburn. They're not going to burst into flames, but they're going to get a sunburn. All right.
Okay. Jimmy, we have a lot of questions in the chat. Are you down to answer a couple of questions?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Do vampires go after certain families or people? Like, it kind of correlates to that question that I just asked. But do they go after certain people or certain blood types?
Well, now on the blood type, let me get my note here. Just give me a moment.
Okay, take your time.
I'm having to do this by remembering here. Now, back in March the 18th, 1985, Prince Charles, which is now King Charles, went to North London Transfusion Center. He's only done it once in his life. He donated blood because of AIDS epidemic. And his blood, we were able to get the readings from it. He has ORH negative blood.
Oh.
And he joked about it. He says, well, my blood's not blue, is it? Now, the royals, they like to stay within their bloodline. So I'm thinking our friends that are half-breeds that run with these vampires. See, a true vampire is going to have blood similar to an octopus. But the ones that you said that interbreed with these vampires, they may very well have the same blood as King Charles does.
Interesting. Jimmy, do vampires fly?
Give me a moment here to think about that. They can leap pretty good. It's unusual how they can leap. Their reflexes can be sometimes 3 times faster than a normal human. It appear that they're flying, but they can leap.
Okay, that correlates actually with what we called here in the United States. We had something called the Vampire of Mineral Spring or Mineral Point, Wisconsin, and I was tasked that as a blind remote viewing target at one point, and it was almost like the story of Spring Hill Jack out of the UK, and it was like a leaping man, but he was like a leaping vampire, and he would leap. I mean, this thing would like jump. People would encounter him in cemeteries, and he would jump from the ground up to like 10, 12 feet in the air as though he had springs in his shoes. But he was kind of flying. It looked like he was flying, but he was more jumping.
Yeah, well, their nervous system is different from ours. And imagine if you could run 3 times faster than a human being, or you could jump 3 times further. You see, you're taking the human body and you're changing the nervous system around. you're adding some very unique abilities, Jessica.
Hmm. I know, especially if they're extraterrestrial too. I mean, with the webbed hands and feet, I would assume they could swim if they have webbed feet and hands. So that's terrifying. That adds another layer to it. I doubt they do swim, but they can, right?
I believe that they can probably swim very well. Wherever it came from, it had a watery planet. Um, or it, some lizards can swim. We
Hmm.
see some lizards can swim. Um, at times we don't understand things fully, and we struggle to get the grasp of it. And but uh, the government is really being run by extraterrestrials, and some of these extraterrestrials differ from other ones. They argue amongst themselves, and you have good extraterrestrials, and you have some that have a much darker reason to be with us.
Yeah. Wow. Um, so are you saying that some of our government is run by reptilians? Let's just say, for instance.
Yes, I've been
Yeah.
around George Bush Sr. Um, I've been knowing George Bush Sr. since 1962, before he died, and I've seen him shape shift. Now, my co-partner, Kathy O'Brien, has seen him shape shift. Um, it shook her up. She didn't understand it. I do. Um, she was a presidential model. I worked, as I said, at Area 51. I would report in to Senator um, Robert Byrd's office when she was working there. And she was into Church of Satan, Satanism stuff. Um, and I'm just kind of, you find a presidential model, uh, young males seek her out for sex, and you learn a lot, about a person's personal life, and you're able to track these people much more easier.
Wow. We have another question. Let's see if it's pulling up here. Could we have been a vampire in a past life? Do you think, Jimmy?
Well, the part about cloning is very real. I've been cloned. I make no. I'm not trying to hide that. When people start remembering past lives, there's a bleed over. Um, some of the super soldiers are cloned. Uh, if you take a regular human being and they can't leave our solar system because the Van Allen radiation belt, and some of the most super soldiers that I know are genetically modified where we can take more radiation than the average human being.
Wow. Okay, I have another question. Susie B has a good point here. Hey, Susie. So, would a vampire make a good assassin? If so, clone worthy? Now, I've heard that a lot of at least 12 to 13 cryptids work directly with our governments and special agencies. Do you think that they're used for purposes such as that, assassinations and things of that matter?
I think the half breeds possibly could be the pure breeds. They're uncontrollable. They're not. They're a totally predator now. If one has sex, it's possible that they could pick up traits from it. So I'm not surprised by the question. Not at all.
And in some of these facilities, they would train super soldiers first against zombies, and then against a zombie, then a vampire, then zombie and vampires. So then multiple vampires. Vampires, yeah, more experienced, formidable opponent. So yeah, so certainly they are. I believe they are in these programs, and yeah, for sure.
Well,
Wow.
I believe you're correct, James. You know, Dulce, New Mexico, Duce, New Mexico, excuse me. Um, my friend Phil Snyder was shot by extraterrestrial. I was standing right by him when he hit, and we were finding bodies down there in vats. They were cutting them up like you would, make a soup or something. Um, and
What?
it's you know it goes back to individuals having a soul and some not having a soul. And that's where you get into this real dark stuff at. That's why we're having so much Satanism going on. The numbers are building up.
Uh,
There's a lot of Satanism. Actually, I mean, I hear about it in the military. I hear about it in the highest forms of government. A lot of satanic rituals going on. I mean, I think that maybe where a lot of these missing children and missing people are going for ritual purposes. And especially, I had our friend Daryl James on my show here on Glitch in the Matrix. And he was telling us about the human animal hybrids in the underground facilities and humans being fed to them in some instances. So, but I think there's a very satanic angle, I guess you could say, to a lot of this, especially the vampirism.
You're
so,
you're you're very correct. You're right on with it. Um, just in the United States alone, 100,000 individuals come up missing every year. Now, we're just talking about the U.S. What about Mexico, Canada, Argentina? This is going on all over the world, for Christ's sake. Um, and when the 1997, the lights over Phoenix, United States Air Force did not engage it because they were told to stand down. So, um, United Nations is not going to do anything. They take their orders from these creatures.
and that was the Enterprise, the Phoenix Lights.
That was Enterprise that came down. Um, but I'm using it as an example. We're look, when President Obama took office, the third day he was in office, he went to Egypt to the Sphinx uh, to the Sphinx statue. And originally, what happened about 8,000 years ago, a flying saucer um, crashed into Egypt. It was damaged, and that's where you get these reptilian gods from. The second saucer crashed about 5 miles from my home. Um, so I've been inside the one that crashed in Mississippi. It was taken and brought to Wright Air Force Base, and but these flying saucers can fly through time, and they've been manipulating our religion. They've been manipulating our politics for a very long time.
Uh, Jimmy, can you talk about what happened with Mangala and the concentration camps when they were
Yeah,
starving? Okay, go ahead.
I want to, but I want to save it for the second show because we don't want to overload people. Um, some people are just signing in, tuning in for the first time. They need time to digest this information, and I want to just remind them, I have no book to sell them, and and I'm not going to go to your hometown. I'm not going to investigate a vampire or a Bigfoot. I've done this all my life. Um, I work at I have worked at Area 51, and if I ever did do it again, it would be out of Frenchman Flats or Nellis Air Force Base. It had to be under a contractor. for the military industrial complex. I will not work for an individual, no matter how much money.
Can you comment if vampires get along with lycanthropes?
Could you say it again, please?
Do vampires get along with werewolves? Vampires and werewolves?
There's friction. I've been around werewolves. Got scratched by one when I was a kid. So I've been around them, werewolves are very real. Their DNA is enhanced. I've been around them.
Yeah. Wow.
That's why.
We'll say that for another show.
Yeah, we'll say that for another show because this is just fantastic, Jimmy. I have 100% enjoyed this to the fullest extent today, and I know my audience has too. We had a big crowd here today, and got a lot of good information out. And I'm used to talking about dogmen, werewolves, Bigfoots, so it's really refreshing. And I was going to make a joke about blood, but that's not really cool because I don't want anything to come get my blood. Okay. But I think it's really refreshing to have some real life information about some real life vampires today with you, Jimmy, and you too, James. This has been really cool. So thank you, Jimmy. Are there any final thoughts before we end the show today on vampires?
Well, don't end up like me having a dual religion. Just, when you first find out, it shocks you, and you forget why you're here and that you're here for higher purposes and believe in your spirituality. Just because the Catholic Church is having sex scandals, a lot of people got, lost the faith. I turned to Native American Paiute. So I'm spiritual in that area. Don't join a cult just because you want to find out about vampires or a werewolf. Be yourself and do your own research.
Yeah. Well, that's what I do. And I am a boots on the ground kind of researcher. So I do get out there and look for stuff like this, but I've never gone vampire hunting, even though one of our presidents did it in a fictional movie. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. That was actually a pretty cool movie. But yeah, I don't recommend vampire hunting to my crew that's watching today and listening on podcast format. Leave it up to the professionals, whoever those are. I guess the MIBs, right, Jimmy?
I would say so, but when the two paranormal researchers were murdered, they just covered that up, and it's just not worth a book. It's not worth a movie. And let these things play out. I mean, if you truly have a problem, just get a hold of somebody from Nellis Air Force Base, and let them make a decision. And the church, forget about them. I mean, it's just an Area 51 technician dressed up as a priest because you can move more easily amongst that group. But no, I hope never to put on the uniform of a Catholic priest again and show up. I don't ever want to go to another exorcism like you see in the movie. And I don't like seeing one of our guys pushed down some stairs and killed.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to protect ourselves. So everybody go with your gut and protect your neck. Okay. Go with your gut, protect your neck.
And eat garlic.
And eat garlic. I mean, put it on your ice cream, y'all. Put it in your coffee in the morning if you want it. If you suspect there are vampires lurking around, and don't invite them into your home. Okay. And that aligns with so many other cryptids and paranormal things like black-eyed children. I mean, I think some black-eyed children could be vampiric. Okay, like I don't know. I think that some of the bad reptilians, some of the ETs, a lot of them are vampiric. They do eat your blood, and werewolves and dogmen. So, but vampires are vampires, and yeah. And so today I learned something. I learned a lot of new stuff today, Jimmy. Thank you. you know, vampires are potentially ETs mixed with humans. Okay. And I just recently did a show on the face peelers out of Peru. It was one of my remote viewing targets, and those things are real, and they're eating humans. Okay, so
And
there's
and there's
lot
a
to look
and
at
there's
for.
a yeah, there's a good reason why all the other monsters are friends with Dracula, because they could always count on him.
Count Dracula.
I,
And James,
I,
you
won't- I,
know, that's
I, won't-
funny, you know.
I won't give you any more bad jokes, but yeah, there you have it.
Oh my gosh, well, we get to leave it on a fun note today because it's been a fun show and a great show and absolutely scary. And Jimmy and James, please come back and let's do part 2 soon. Within maybe in October. Let's go ahead and do it for a Halloween show. I would love to talk more about vampires and potentially the living dead. Okay, zombies too.
Yes,
Okay.
I've if you watch the movie Night of the Living Dead, the original black and white one, that
Uh-huh.
was filmed in 19, I believe 67. I was there when they reanimated. I can surely tell you about zombies.
Well, I want to hear all about that. So let's do it. Let's save that for the next show. And so James, I know that you actually have a really amazing YouTube channel, and you have a website, and you've written a book called Lone Wolf. So tell the audience where they can find you in your book.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so my name is James Rink, for people who don't know about the work I do. My channel is Super Soldier Talk, and I managed to survive all the waves of censorship somehow. My book is, of course, Lone Wolf, and goes more into the super soldier programs, secret space programs. I go into different planetary corporations, and I jam-packed the book. About half of it's full of my experiences as well. So you can get that book, a copy of that on my website, neologicaltech.com, or you can go to supersoldiertalk.com. There's a little picture there on the right. You can click on that. But yeah, so Jessica, maybe I don't know, Jimmy, if you're interested. I was thinking about, just like we went out to Montauk last August, sorry. So I was thinking maybe we should go to New Orleans next year, probably in the spring before all the heat kicks in. I don't know if Jimmy has any desire to go. There's a abandoned military base there that had another Montauk, 3.0 there. So I don't know. We could talk about it off camera if you want.
Well,
But
shoot, yeah, y'all hold tight after we do the outro today. Let's talk about it. Y'all stick tight, and we're gonna make that happen, hopefully. And I know some people that would like to go to that too. So yeah, let's plan on that. I mean, New Orleans, I'm a little scared though for the vampires. I just had to learn how to protect myself against skinwalkers this past summer. Okay, so now it's vampires. So hey, life's an adventure, right, James?
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
You and I have been on a lot of adventures together this year. So let's add another one to the list. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, everybody, thank y'all so much for being here today. This has been so fantastic. Everybody, I thank James and Jimmy for being here. This has been amazing. So tomorrow night, y'all join me at 8 p.m. Eastern. I have a remote viewing show. I don't know what that target is yet, so I will be announcing that tonight. And then join me this weekend on Spaced Out Radio, Saturday and Sunday night. James, where do you have any shows coming up or any conferences you're going to be at?
Well, I got an interview of Kusal Uch, and he was channeling more about Tartaria. I also interviewed Sarah Breskman. She's going to be talking about Lemuria. She has these books about where she not interviews, but does regression work on some people. Her in her network. I'm also going to be going down to Orlando for Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference. So get your tickets for that event. And I'm hoping, I'm going to be getting, I think Brad Olson, Tony Rodriguez is coming up. So and I just interviewed this lady that she works down in Antarctica, base 211, just yesterday. So you could go check out Dr. Commander Anu. So she, anyway.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's a fantastic channel, James. You do such great work. And I'm super proud of you. And I'm excited that we're friends and we get to have all these adventures together. So it's awesome. You guys go check out James at Super Soldier Talk all over the internet, on his website and on YouTube. And Jimmy, is there anything that you don't like people contacting you? Am I correct? he likes to, I think you're muted, but yeah, you like to stay to yourself, right?
Yes, if anyone wants to contact me, they go through James Rink. I'm primarily looking for an aerospace company or someone that works inside the military industrial park at Nellis Air Force Base or Holloman Air Force Base. If you have these problems, just get hold of James. I'll come on back down there and we'll get together and work it out. Haul in an alien or two.
That sounds like another adventure. Okay. Sounds fun. Jimmy, thank you so much for being here. We're going to see you next time at the Cryptid Huntress. And you too, James. Y'all have a wonderful day. Everybody, go subscribe to James's channel, and I will see y'all here tomorrow night. Y'all have a great day. Bye,
And another
y'all.
one. Bye.